Hey everyone, welcome back to the Weekly Awakening Podcast, episode 265. I am back. Don't shoot the messenger though. I am sorry I have not been around, left you guys hanging for 2 weeks. The end of Jupiter in Gemini and then Mercury in Gemini has made my life really crazy. There was lots of movements, my kids' life, my own life, and honestly my brain was everywhere but here. And never fear though, I am back. So what has been happening? Friday, June 6th, Venus ingressed into one of her home domiciles, Taurus, at 12:42 a.m. Yes, officially ending Venus retrograde. Now that she's out of Aries, where she began that retrograde. Sunday, June 8th, Mercury conjunct Jupiter at the 29th degree in Gemini at 4:11 p.m., right as both planets were ingressing into Cancer. This past weekend, it felt very Mercury retrograde-like, and last week, however, it was just Jupiter at the 29th degree in Gemini. Then we have, what do we do? Then they both ingressed into Cancer on Tuesday, today, June 17th. Mars enters Virgo, and on Wednesday, the 18th, we have the full moon in Sagittarius, 3:48 a.m. Whew, I'm ready for this full moon, though. In general, though, where do I begin? The season of change is upon us, especially with all the major big, and I mean physically big, planets shifting into new signs. And one other thing, again, when life gets chaotic, it always seems to happen in either the air or fire signs. And most likely, except when there's certain transits happening in other signs, I feel like Gemini season and Aries season, the spring seasons when things really kick off. So I know I'm not alone, especially people with kids in grade school and above. Life is crazy during this time. But let's start with talking about something small, one of the smaller planets. Venus moving, ingressing. So when you hear me say the word ingress, that means moving. I know some of you guys aren't quite versed in astrology, but I don't know any other person except for astrologers who use the word ingress. So not everyone knows what I mean by that. So when Venus, she ingressed into one of her home signs, the Earth sign of Taurus. And like I said earlier, that means her retrograde officially ended because Venus retrograde began in Aries. So yes, we have been out of Venus retrograde for several weeks now, 6-7 weeks now, maybe even 8 weeks. However, we were still in those beginning degrees, in those late degrees where she began the retrograde. So once she moved into Aries, we officially were out of that retrograde, and she's at her worst in Aries. So now she is back at home. So what can we expect with this now that Venus is in her home domicile of Taurus? Well, the general of this is grounded enjoyment, right? The Earth sign. So there's a lot of being grounded again, especially since she's been so long in Pisces and in Aries. She was not grounded in those signs whatsoever. So now we have grounded enjoyment, grounded love, grounded family communication and friend communication. And yes, again, I'm using the word grounded, but the truth is Venus, like I said, actually the truth is she probably has not been grounded since the fall, now that I'm thinking about it. It's been a long time that our happiness, our joys, and all of those good feelings, those love has been up and down, confused, not sure what's happening, and not sure which way to put or place our enjoyment. So now that she's back in the Earth sign, well out of her retrograde, she's starting to feel like her normal self again. So when it comes to our joy, love, happiness, family, beauty, and all the things that Venus rolls over, we are now in a grounded state. Things that arose around those topics during this retrograde make sense now. And again, with a grounded energy, enjoyment and love and all those good things surrounding that won't feel like a struggle or resistance anymore now that Venus is in Taurus for almost a month until she moves into Gemini July 4th. She does likes Gemini, but Gemini, again, is a little more chaotic, fun, maybe even a little bit of like, ooh, I want to get in trouble kind of fun, but we'll talk about that when July 4th comes. So Mercury and Jupiter together all weekend in the late degrees of Gemini, like I said, really had Thursday through Sunday feeling like a Mercury retrograde. Mercury retrograde does not start, though, until the end of July. I know I cannot be the only one, and I know especially my Mercury placements are really feeling it. Probably all my mutable placements, Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, and Pisces. Honestly, last week, part of why I couldn't do this podcast is I couldn't sleep. It's the craziest thing, and it says Jupiter has entered Gemini. This whole year, I've had more sleeping problems than I've ever had. It conjunct my Mercury, my Sun, and then also squared my first house in Virgo, squared my Virgo moon, my ascendant. It just wasn't good for me in sleep. So last week, I'm telling you, and only time I am moody or in a bad mood is when I don't sleep. I swear to you. Other than that, most things do not crush my mood. So last week I was also so scattered from not sleeping. My brain couldn't even put this entire podcast together, but I was still somehow doing the mom thing and the hair thing. So now that we have Mercury in Cancer, Jupiter in Cancer, there's going to be a much more positive shift for our emotions this week. So let's talk about Jupiter in Cancer. Jupiter will be in the sign of Cancer from June 9th until June 20th of 2026. So a little over a full year. Jupiter in Cancer is exalted, which means it can be expressed at its full potential in Cancer. It's at its best potential. Like nothing is hindering or holding the planet back. When a planet's exalted, like I said, it's lifted up. Everything. It's almost like getting a really positive like steroid boost and you're at your all-time high. Like everything is working out. So Jupiter in Gemini was actually in its detriment. And we'll talk a little bit more on this episode about that. But when it's in its detriment, it's at its weakest or cannot work at its greatest potential. It's almost like something is holding it back from reaches its highest potential or really allowing it to be free and express itself the normal benefic way that it likes to. So Jupiter, in general, the benefic planet, it brings expansion, abundance, growth, good luck, positivity, wisdom, spirituality, and religious ideologies. So let's talk about what Cancer represents in the zodiac, and then we'll put Jupiter and Cancer together and really kind of give you an idea about what this year-long transit is going to be like. So the moon rules over Cancer. So what Cancer represents in the zodiac, in the astrology world, is our emotions, our deeply felt emotions that come up in the moment. So what does that mean? Basically, our first reaction to things, that emotional reaction. You're going to look to the moon, where the moon is, as well as your own personal moon planet. The family, the home environment, home in general, like the comforts of our home, what we like in our comfort, the goddess, feminine energy, mothering, loving. That is all what Cancer represents. So when you combine Jupiter, right, the planet of abundance, growth, expansion, blessings, spiritual beliefs, with the home environment, the emotions, the family, you get a really soft, warm, fuzzy, cozy, beautiful energy that's going to fill up all of those spaces that we just talked about with really positive, feel-good energy. When Jupiter was in its fall where it's debilitated for the last year, there was a very interesting manic energy. It doesn't mean it was all bad, but again, Jupiter couldn't express itself the full potential when it's hindered by the mind, the communicator of Gemini. A rush to get things done. Your mind and your body were just running at two different speeds, not matching up. Emotions and mind not aligning. And at times really reaching this manic place in our mind. This was felt by the collective, where things weren't making sense, but also happening really fast and sudden. But also personally really felt the most among the mutable placements. So if you have the big three or Mercury in Gemini, Virgo, Sagittarius, or Pisces, there was a lot of that manic energy all year long. So the end of this transit, though, however, in Gemini, has brought a new reborn sense of self, the desire to seek out faith again, and also wherever Gemini is in your birth chart, there was this new positive faith and a belief that something is going to work out again. And again, you may be where this section of Gemini is in your birth chart, maybe you were, or where Jupiter is in your birth chart, maybe you didn't have any beliefs anymore. Maybe you couldn't see how something was working out. And more importantly, maybe you were just confused and chaotic and kept flipping back and forth about what you wanted. And things didn't make sense. So now at the end of this transit and now in the beginning of Cancer, there is a new positive belief again. Belief that it's working out. Belief that your life is working out the way it should, or this issue that arose is working out. The area that you were feeling dimmed down or confused now has a new positive direction that has taken place, and it's a very clear direction with a naturally positive feel to it. Like you instantly know it's the right direction. Like almost it's no work. It's just like this is just happening freely. That's when you know you're on the right path, when there is no resistance and it's just working out just how you thought. You're on the right path. For my Cancer placements, this is going to be really nice, welcomed, positive change, especially coming off Mars retrograde in Cancer. Mars is now officially all in Virgo and out of Leo, which makes Mars retrograde officially over. Yes, Mars retrograde has been officially over for about 2 months, but again, kind of like Venus, while Mars was still in Leo, sort of these retrograde things came about. So it wasn't until Mars officially left Leo, which just happened today, can the final conclusion, and we can really put Mars retrograde off into our path and away. And truly, if we want to go there, Mars entered Cancer September of 2024. That was really when Mars retrograde things sort of kicked off. And then it began the retrograde officially. So it was in that period of the shadow period in Cancer in beginning. And then we entered into Leo in December. It officially retrograded. And then Mars retrograde in Cancer began January 6th, I believe, was it? Whatever that day that horrible fire in California happened was when Mars ingressed into Cancer, ironically. So this was actually the longest time Mars has spent in Cancer in like decades, because it was just there. Yes, it spends a long time when it retrogrades, which happens, I think the last retrograde was 2008, I believe I said that it was. I believe it's 2008. But it wasn't even retrograding in Cancer, in the sign of Cancer, for as long as it was this time. So, okay, we don't have to deal with Mars retrograde again until 2038. However, it still will not be retrograding in the sign of Cancer as long as it has this time. So we're in the clear, and now that Jupiter has entered Cancer, I'm telling you, my Cancer placements, y'all are finally feeling good and positive again. The answers you have been seeking are here. The plan is unfolding in a very positive way, and those much-needed blessings have arrived. Trust and believe this year is going to be one of the biggest blessings of a year you can think of, and that things are going to work out, because they really will. And honestly, I want to throw in there, actually all my water signs are now going to have a really nice, so that's Pisces, Scorpio, and of course Cancer. You guys are going to have a nice trine, and Cancers will have a conjunction, a nice trine to Jupiter in Aries. To Jupiter in Cancer. So I'm excited, especially my water signs. You guys sometimes can get lost emotionally, but this is going to be a really nice, beautiful blessing, and like trusting yourself, trusting your intuition, trusting your emotions, and just really believing and not getting caught up in the darker side of being a water sign sometimes. Or I should not say darker, but the deeply felt side of being in a water sign. So full moon in Sagittarius. Yes, the full moon in Sagittarius can usually feel chaotic and crazy, manic. We have the planet Mercury right now. The planet Mercury rules over Gemini. So now it's ruling over the sun in Gemini opposite the moon in Sagittarius, which the planet Jupiter rules over. One communicates, right, the Mercury, through talking, and the other through feeling, Jupiter. One is mental understanding, Mercury, and the other one is emotional understanding, Jupiter. Now, we talked about the feels earlier with Jupiter and Gemini, which is honestly usually how this full moon will feel every year, depending on where Jupiter is, and where Mercury is. But now that Jupiter is calm, happy, and feeling at home in Cancer, this full moon is going to be a little bit less chaotic than normal. I feel like the normal feels of this full moon we felt last weekend at Jupiter's 29th degree in Gemini. Now this is going to be much more positive, much more of a rebirth. So the full moon in Sagittarius, any chaos will work out with almost perfect circumstances that maybe show up during this full moon. And today we're in the energy of the full moon. We're feeling that. Or something that maybe kicked off last weekend at the late degrees of Jupiter and Gemini will, again, work out with almost perfect circumstances. Any disbelief will turn into instant belief. When you need luck, it will appear. You will feel more optimistic. This is a good full moon to return to some faith and spiritual beliefs that have been, coming up strong, especially, again, Jupiter and Gemini. So have faith. How can your spiritual growth bring you the peace that you need right now? What can you do during this full moon to really harness that and continue to grow that belief within yourself? What's been blocking your faith? Most likely over this year with Jupiter and Gemini, it's been your own mental belief system. It's been you losing dedication to whether it's prayer, whether it's meditation, whether, your spiritual feelings come from going hiking or being in nature, there's some part of you that got lost or just couldn't focus on that or really couldn't put your attention there. So it's really time to go there and say, hey, if I want to bring peace, joy, happiness, and love into my life, I need to also grow that with faith and spirituality in order to attain those things, at least to the highest ability. In my own belief, in my own life, I know that to be true. So that's come up with a full moon mantra. Simple. You know what? The Gemini in me, the Virgo in me, we like to keep it very simple. I have faith. I have faith. That's it. All fucking week long, 2 weeks, I have faith. Whenever you feel doubt of faith, and I'm talking in those tiny moments like, did I hope I didn't lock my keys in the car? No, I have faith I didn't lock the keys in my car. Oh, I hope that person is mad at me. No, I have faith. I have faith. I have faith that person's not mad at me. I have faith. So all of these tiny little nuances or words that our brain sometimes is trying to tear us down or bring us disbelief, I want you to counteract that and have faith. Because the truth is, things always work out one way or another. They do, especially for those that have belief. We can go into the laws of the universe, but we'll save that for another episode. So again, whether it's deep knowing, like this deep knowing inside you of faith, of spirituality, of love, of the universe, whatever it is, or the wandering faith that needs a home again, that you don't know, you know there's faith somewhere out there, but you need to harness it, you need to grab it. I have faith. Without faith, what do we have? Honestly, what do we have? Why? And why? This is a question too, wonders of why do we sometimes only rely on faith when the going gets tough? Why not celebrate and give thanks to faith by showing up in all of our moments with it? Like I had said, every time I have faith, you know, this will work out to my greatest good. Say that I have faith, this will work out to my greatest good. Don't lose faith. And it just like our mind, faith is also something we have to practice. We have to exercise. That's right. Hundreds of thousands of people since the beginning of time have showed up in prayer, have showed up in dedication, because it is faith is a muscle that we need to work out, that we need to practice, that we need to dedicate even an hour, right? An hour a week to, that will help fill our spirit when we need it in these tiny moments of lack of faith or these other moments where it's missing. We need to find the faith. So with this full moon, it's going to be a faith rebirth to what's always been deep inside you, that knowing. And with this full moon, believe that everything will work out. What do we say? Say it with me. Have faith. Have faith. Cancer season begins on the 20th, and I'm just very excited to have this Cancer season beginning with Jupiter in Cancer. There's going to be a lot of blessings, but Jupiter in Cancer, beginning the Cancer season out. I just feel like it's going to be, I said June was one of the most positive months, and it has been quite positive, or feeling much better than the beginning of 2025 did, or even the middle of 2025. However, Cancer season, we're going to be really, really happy, and we're going to be emotionally more settled and mentally more settled than we have been. Everyone, lots of blessings. Have and enjoy and soak in this new faith that's being reborn inside you. Have the belief. Positive energy and positivity is contagious. It is contagious. And if we all could spread a little love and some positivity and some joy, the world would be a better place. So make sure you do that in your world, and that's how we spread it, because we know this world needs it. This world needs it. So all you could do, though, is help your immediate environment and give them that Jupiter and Cancer love. I love you all. I will be back next week. I will have more information. Right now, life is getting a little bit better and slowed down, so I'll be back to my weekly Awakening podcast. Again, I'm sorry I left you hanging for 2 weeks. I love you all. Goodbye.